It's 3:47 a.m. The city is asleep, and something impossible is unfolding over Russian airspace. Four objects streak toward Moscow at roughly 380 kilometers per hour, slipping through the sensors of some of the planet's most advanced air defense systems. Whatever these things are, they shouldn't exist. Outside Raison, the S-400 radar operator squints at his console. On screen, a cluster of contacts drifts into view. At first glance, they look like a flock. But birds don't fly in precise geometrical formations, and they don't fly directly at a major oil complex. At 52 kilometers out, 27 kilometers from the S-400 battery, the lead aircraft pulls up sharply to 800 meters. If these were true missiles, they'd close in 27 seconds. If they were drones running at emergency thrust, they'd reach the last 2 kilometers in 41 seconds. That leaves the commander with roughly 14 seconds to decide. Are these genuine threats or elaborate decoys? His training cycles through options. A single interceptor costs roughly $2 million. Hesitation is expensive. 10 seconds left. The closure rate is real. 7 seconds. His doctrine says confirm visually before engaging. 5 seconds. But if they are real, hesitation means catastrophe. He makes the call. 248N-6DM interceptors erupt from their canisters, screaming to Mach 6 in under 3 seconds. Then the strange behavior begins. The drones peel off and dive to 200 meters, dropping beneath the radar horizon. Here's the problem. Those interceptors rely on semi-active radar homing. They don't carry their own search radars. They need the ground radar to illuminate a target continuously. Without that steady paint, the missile's seeker only knows a last-seen position. A guess. The interceptors explode about 80 meters above where the targets were last tracked. The fragments fan out, 24,000 pieces of steel, tearing through air that's already empty. Close enough to be dramatic, but not close enough to stop the attackers. Now the refinery's final layer of defense comes online. 2 Pantsir S-1 batteries, with their RS-21E radars tuned for larger returns. Against a tiny 0.1 square meter drone at 8 kilometers, the radar echoes are almost indistinguishable from noise. Contacts flicker intermittently. The hydraulics on the 2 A-38M cannons take precious seconds to slew. By the time the guns are aimed, the lead attacker has already picked its mark. The first strike lands. In the space of seconds, then the next, and the next. The western quadrant of the complex is consumed. The cascade roars through hundreds of thousands of tons of petroleum. Temperatures spike toward 2,000 degrees Celsius. The inferno will rage for days. In under 2 minutes, Moscow's regional fuel reserves are slashed by 40%. That was only the opening gambit. 470 kilometers away, another wave is inbound. A dozen drones bearing down on a different refinery. This time, the defenders believe they're prepared. 3 Pantsir batteries form a triangle, overlapping fire. Each RS-21E can track a couple dozen objects and engage a handful simultaneously out to 20 kilometers. The crews have practiced Ukrainian tactics and expect to neutralize the threat. At 4:03 a.m., things go sideways. 4 of the incoming 12 suddenly climb to 500 meters, exposing themselves. The classification algorithm shifts. Signatures, velocity, radar frequency response. The system screams, this resembles a KH-101 cruise missile. But that assessment is a lie. The climbing units have deployed corner reflectors, triangular aluminum panels engineered for retro-reflection. Radar energy bounces straight back, amplified. A tiny reflector can mimic the radar return of a much larger object. The system sees cruise missiles because the reflectors were designed to do exactly that. Faced with what the computer says are cruise missiles, the battery commander's protocol is black and white. Engage. Hundreds of missiles launch in seconds, each accelerating to hundreds of meters per second. They home in on amplified echoes, aluminum foil the size of a cigarette pack. Missiles designed to take out heavy weapons are chasing cheap reflectors. Millions burned chasing pennies. While the crews are focused skyward at the spectacle of phantom cruise missiles, something worst of all is happening behind them. 8 UJ-22s have sneaked in low and fast from the opposite direction at roughly 50 meters altitude. They're invisible to the fixed electronic scan of the Pantsir's phased array. To look behind, the entire turret must mechanically traverse, a process that takes several agonizing seconds. By the time the guns turn, the drones are inside the kill envelope. At these ranges, the 57 E-6 missiles can't arm their proximity fuses in time. Only the twin 30mm autocannons remain. The fire control computer computes a lead angle based on predictable motion, but these UJ-22s were built to exploit predictability. They execute dynamic altitude variation, random, 2-second shifts between 40 and 80 meters. That unpredictability turns a high-probability intercept into a coin flip. One drone slams into the stream of rounds and disintegrates. 7 slip through and find their targets. The battery reload cycle, an automatic process that takes 90 seconds, leaves the defenders exposed. The Refinery takes 3 more devastating hits. The Ukrainian planners had timed everything. They had calculated loader cycles, hydraulic traversal times, sensor latencies. Every second was accounted for. Their strikes were surgical, devastatingly precise, but not every target yielded so easily. At Vones, 6 UJ-26 Beavers closed in, only to lose navigation. GPS coordinates vanished, communications died, telemetry went silent. The culprit was a Krosuka 4 electronic warfare vehicle. It flooded a broad band of the spectrum with directed power. To put it into perspective, GPS satellites transmit whispers, measured in hundredths of a watt, from 20,000 kilometers away. A powerful jammer like the Crocus is literally quadrillions of times stronger at the point of attack, like trying to hear a pin drop while standing inside a jet engine. The drones reverted to their inertial navigation systems. Gyros drift. After a 380-kilometer flight, accumulated error can be catastrophic. Meters turn into hundreds of meters. As processors heat under strain, cores throttling to avoid meltdown, the drones shut down non-essential systems to eke out precious seconds. Telemetry off, radar warnings off. Every watt conserved buys a fraction of a degree in cooling, which buys cycles per second in pattern matching. Time is shrinking. At 20 seconds to impact, the algorithm fails to lock on conventional features. At 8 seconds, a processor at the edge of thermal shutdown finally finds a pattern, not in the tanks themselves, but in the geometry of their shadows. 3 tanks cast a triangle. The intersection of those shadows is a stable, invariant signature. One drone pins the match with 4 meters to spare, and the warhead impacts exactly where concrete yields to steel. A fuel lake ignites. Crews abandon millions in vehicles as the flames advance at 30 meters per second. As jamming clears, more contacts bloom on the screens. 8 more drones converge on Russia's most fortified military airfield. Primorsko-Akhtar is a fortress. Tor-M2 systems in diamond formation. Overlapping coverage, Su-35s circling overhead. Commanders had modeled attacks and expected to annihilate 8 slow, predictable drones.